Hello everyone and welcome to the lecture on AWS Control Tower. So this lecture will contain all these topics. So benefits of AWS Control Tower, key features of AWS Control Tower, structure of an AWS Control Tower landing zone, and there will be subtopics like setting up an AWS Control Tower landing zone and how to safely manage resources in your AWS Control Tower environment, shared accounts in AWS Control Tower landing zone. Then this will be followed by an architecture diagram which will summarize all these three topics and subtopics. Finally, we will have understanding AWS Control Tower controls and how they are implemented, and how AWS Control Towers work with stack sets, cloud formation stack sets. So AWS Control Tower is a service that offers a straightforward way to set up and govern an AWS multi-account environment following prescriptive best practices. AWS Control Tower orchestrates the capabilities of several other AWS services to build a landing zone quickly. With AWS Control Tower, resources are set up and managed on your behalf, which allows you to build a landing zone in less than 1 hour. To help keep your organizations and accounts from drift, which is divergence from the best practices, AWS Control Tower applies controls, sometimes also called as guardrails. So benefits of AWS Control Tower. First, if you are hosting more than a handful of accounts, it is beneficial to have an orchestration layer that facilitates account deployment and account governance. You can adopt AWS Control Tower as your primary way to provision AWS accounts and infrastructure. With AWS Control Tower, you can more easily adhere or stick to corporate standards, meet regulatory requirements, and follow best practices. Fourth, AWS Control Tower enables end users on your distributed teams to provision new AWS accounts quickly by means of configurable account templates in Account Factory. Meanwhile, your central cloud administrators can monitor that all accounts are aligned with established company-wide compliance policies. Key features of AWS Control Tower. First one, a landing zone. A landing zone is a well-established multi-account environment based on security and compliance best practices. It serves as an enterprise-wide container holding organizational units, OUs, AWS accounts, users, and resources subject to compliance regulation. Landing zones can scale to fit the needs of enterprise of any size. Second, controls: preventive, detective, and proactive. So there are three types. Controls are categorized as mandatory, strongly recommended, or elective. Next key feature is an account factory, which is a configurable account template that helps standardize the provisioning of new AWS accounts with pre-approved configurations. AWS Control Tower offers a built-in account factory to automate the account provisioning workflow in your organization. Last is the dashboard. The dashboard provides continuous oversight of your landing zone to your team of central cloud administrators. It allows you to see provisioned accounts across your enterprise, enabled controls for policy enforcement, and continuous detection of non-compliant resources organized by accounts and organizational units, OUs. Okay, structure of an AWS Control Tower landing zone. The root is the parent organizational unit that contains all other OUs organizational unit in your AWS Control Tower landing zone. Second is the security OU, contains the log, archive, and audit accounts, often referred to as shared accounts. During landing zone launch, you can choose a customized name for these accounts and bring existing AWS accounts into AWS Control Tower for security and logging. However, these cannot be renamed or added later after the initial launch. Then there is something called as sandbox OU, which is created during the landing zone launch if enabled. This and other registered OUs organizational units contain the enrolled accounts that your users work with to perform their AWS workloads. Then we have IAM Identity Center. IAM Identity Center directory houses your IAM Identity Center users. So just remember, IAM Identity Center is AWS single sign-on, and the IAM Identity Center directory houses your IAM Identity Center users and defines the scope of permissions for each user. IAM Identity Center users are the identities that your users can assume to perform their AWS workloads in your landing zone. Okay, setting up an AWS Control Tower landing zone. So you can choose security and sandbox. Sandbox is optional. So if you are chosen, both actually OUs are optional. Then the log archive account and the audit account. So this is under security OU, log archive and audit accounts. These are AWS account. So under security OU, it will create two AWS account, one for log and one for audit. And third one, if you choose the default AWS Control Tower configuration, it creates a cloud native directory in IAM Identity Center with pre-configured groups and single sign-on access. Alternatively, it allows you to self-manage your identity provider also. Fourth, AWS Control Tower applies all mandatory preventive controls to enforce policies across the organization except for the management account, or which is the parent account or the root account. It also applies all mandatory detective controls to detect configuration violations across the organization as a whole. Okay, and how to safely manage resources in your AWS Control Tower environment. So when you create your landing zone, AWS Control Tower creates a number of AWS resources. To use AWS Control Tower properly, you must not modify or delete these managed resources outside of the supported methods. Second, deleting or modifying the AWS Control Tower managed resources will cause your landing zone to enter an unknown state, which can lead to issues and inconsistencies. 3. When you enable optional controls, those with strongly recommended or elective guidance, AWS Control Tower creates and manages additional AWS resources in your accounts. It is important not to modify or delete those resources. Fourth, modifying or deleting the resources created by AWS Control Tower for optional controls can result in controls entering an unknown state, which may impact the functionality and security of your environment. Okay, shared accounts in AWS Control Tower landing zone. So we have already seen, but just to summarize, there are 3 shared accounts. One, the management account or the root account or the parent account is created specifically for your landing zone. It is used for billing for everything in your landing zone and for account factory provisioning of accounts, as well as managing OUs and controls. It is not recommended to run any type of production workloads from this account. Second, the log archive account works as a repository for logs of API activities and resource configurations from all accounts in the landing zone. Third one, the audit account is a restricted account designed to give your security and compliance teams read and write access to all accounts in your landing zone. From the audit account, you have programmatic access to review accounts by means of a role that is granted to Lambda functions only. The audit account does not allow you to log into other accounts manually. Okay, this is now to summarize whatever we have learned so far. This is the high level architecture diagram of AWS Control Tower. So one of the prerequisite is we'll start with AWS organizations. So we have to enable this feature or use this feature. Remember, we are dealing with more than one account. So if you just have a single account, which is your parent account or root account, you will not run into this feature. But if once you have enabled like multi-account and AWS organizations for more than one account, then you have this AWS Control Tower feature, which you can enable or start using this service. And under this AWS Control Tower, first we have seen landing zone, and under landing zone it starts with, so by default there is a organizational unit which is called as root. So always there will be root, but you can create other default other OU as well, but default root will always contain your parent or the first root account or AWS account. So this is the landing zone, and part of the landing zone are, we have seen, it will when you enable a landing zone, it will create something called as organizational unit equal to security, and under that security it will create two AWS account. One is for audit purpose and one for log archive account for logging purpose. Next there will be shared OU, which is equal to sandbox. This is for the shared workloads from other accounts or OUs which you already have, but this is optional. Then third one is it will enable IAM identity center or AWS single sign-on, and under that it will create provision a cloud native directory for you to enable single sign-on and create your IAM users or IAM identity center user, I should say, so that they can log in from here, and then they can do single sign-on to other AWS accounts, which can be over here, it can be over here, right? And last part is you have other accounts as well. For example, AWS account A, B, C, D, and they have their own set of resources, and these AWS accounts can be part of some other OU. Like in this diagram I have OU pre-sales and OU engineering, and then you can bring them as you can do the enrollment to landing zone. So once the landing zone is enabled, so you can have users going from management account running like they can see resources, and you can create controls or the guardrails. We'll see that more in the next few slides. So basically this feature is used for the overall management, governance, compliance, conformance and regulatory compliance. So you have central what we call as account and OU to actually basically manage multi-account, and you have account factory to, so not only this, you have account factory feature to provision new AWS accounts, but it is built based on certain templates, and there are other technologies also involved, the guardrails and all, which we see in the next few slides. Okay, now understanding AWS Control Tower controls. A control is a high level rule that provides ongoing governance for your overall AWS environment. Each control enforces a single rule. Controls are expressed in a plain language, making them easy to understand and implement. You can change the elective means optional, or you elect by yourself, or strongly recommended controls that are enforced at any time from the AWS Control Tower console or the AWS Control Tower APIs. Mandatory controls are always applied and they cannot be changed, ensuring a consistent baseline of governance. Okay, types of AWS Control Tower controls. First, preventive controls prevent actions from occurring. For example, elective control called disallow changes to bucket policy for Amazon S3 buckets. So this is the name of a policy, disallow changes to bucket policy for Amazon S3 buckets. Prevents any IAM policy changes within the log archive shared account. Attempted prevented actions are denied and logged in CloudTrail, and the resource is logged in AWS config. Second, detective controls detect specific events when they occur and log the action in CloudTrail. For example, the strongly recommended control called detect whether encryption is enabled for Amazon EBS volumes attached to Amazon EC2 instances. So this is the name of the rule. Detect whether encryption is enabled for Amazon EBS volume attached to Amazon EC2 instances. Detects whether an unencrypted Amazon EBS volume is attached to an EC2 instance in your landing zone. Then third is proactive controls. Checks whether resources are compliant with your company policies and objectives before the resources are provisioned in your accounts. If the resources are out of compliance, they are not provisioned. Proactive controls monitor resources that would be deployed in your accounts by means of AWS CloudFormation templates. Okay, implementation of AWS Control Tower controls. In AWS Control Tower, preventive controls are implemented with service control policies, SCPs. So under the hood, preventive controls are implemented using SCPs, and SCPs are a type of organizational policy that you can use to manage permissions in your organization. Second, detective controls in AWS Control Tower are implemented with AWS config rules. AWS config is a service that enables you to assess, audit, and evaluate the configurations of your AWS resources. Then third one, proactive controls in AWS Control Tower are implemented with AWS CloudFormation hooks. AWS CloudFormation is a AWS service that helps you model and set up your Amazon Web Services resources so that you can spend less time managing those resources and more time focusing on your application that run in AWS. Okay, how AWS Control Tower works with stack sets. So stack sets is part of AWS CloudFormation service. AWS Control Tower utilizes AWS CloudFormation stack sets to set up resources in your AWS accounts. Each stack set has stack instances that correspond to accounts and AWS regions per account. AWS Control Tower deploys one stack set instance per account and region, ensuring a consistent configuration across your environment. AWS Control Tower applies updates to certain accounts and AWS regions selectively based on AWS CloudFormation parameters. This means that some stack instances may receive updates while others are left in an outdated state. When a stack instance goes into an outdated state, it usually means that the stack corresponding to that stack instance is not aligned with the latest template in the stack set. The stack remains usable but might not include the latest resources or parameters. So understanding stack instance behavior during updates. If the stack set update includes changes to the templates, it can be template body or template URL properties, or if the parameters property is specified, AWS CloudFormation marks all stack instances with a status of outdated prior to updating the stack instances in the specified AWS accounts and AWS regions. If the stack set updates does not include changes to the template or parameters, AWS CloudFormation updates the stack instances in the specified accounts and region while leaving all other stack instances with their existing stack instance status. Third, to update all of the stack instances associated with a stack set, you should not specify the AWS accounts or regions properties in the update request. And that's all. Thanks for watching.